Today, we have the masterclass on a very fascinating subject, animation retrospective, history of Indian animation with evolving narratives, techniques, styles, and forms over the decades. It is a great pleasure to welcome the founder and festival director, Aniverse and Visual Arts Foundation, who will conduct this masterclass. Mr. Kireet's notable directorial works include feature film Tea for Taj Mahal, Komal, and India's first live action and 3D animation combination feature film Toonpur Ka Superhero. He is also the screenplay and dialogue writer for feature film The Storyteller, which is based on Satyajit Ray's short story Golpo Boliye Tarini Khuru. Mr. Kireet has made over 25 award-winning short films on myriad social causes, including films for National Film Board of Canada, UNICEF, Childline, USAID, John Hopkins, Save the Children India, besides producing 550 plus ad films for leading brands and agencies. Thank you, Mr. Kireet. Over to you.
Thank you all for coming. It's indeed heartening to see that there's so many of us who are interested in animations, which is very good. Thank you very much. And I've been given the unenviable task of actually telling you what happened in India in the animation space in 1 hour. And that, Deepti, all thanks to you. 1 hour is very, very little time, so I will be rushing through many things so that I can probably answer some questions also after the end of the session. So it's going to be more of a lecture than a masterclass and a Q&A after that, hopefully. The idea is that where we are standing right now, where we are sitting right now, rather, is the place where actually the history of Indian animation started. So we're all in a place where actually the history of Indian animation started, and it's a place that I've been involved with for the past 30, 40 years of my life since I was a teenager. I've been coming here, and it's extraordinary place because this, whatever you see in terms of Indian animation today, we're a 1.32 billion industry. Everything finds its roots to Films Division and to the campus that we have. So I will explain that to you as well. And now NFDC has, of course, acquired this legacy, and I hope that my talk will actually also illuminate certain things about the past, which obviously get lost because of the fact that history is perhaps forgotten too soon. So the idea is, Dadasaheb Phalke was also the pioneer or the father of Indian animation. Just like he was the father of live action animation films. In 1913, by some accounts 1917, he made a film using matchsticks, using stop motion animation. And he was the person who actually also started the animation space. And there was a lot of films. Again, there are my friends from Films Division. So I apologize to you that much of the stuff will not get covered. So please excuse me because I'll have to jump many things, and I may not be able to do justice to this whole thing because I have only 1 hour. But essentially, 1913 is when Dadasaheb Phalke actually attempted to make the first animation film, and it was called Fun with Matchsticks. In Marathi, it was a different title. I'm sorry, my Marathi is still not good, even though I'm a Mumbaikar. And he made this film, and then subsequently there were many attempts to make animation in India. But essentially, what you see here, as I shared with you, the animation actually started over here. You see that building, which is the Museum of Cinema, Indian Museum of Cinema. That building out there, that's a heritage structure. That structure is where animation actually started in the 1950s. So this was the first attempt to actually start a studio in India. This was the first attempt, and it was called the Cartoon Film Unit, and there are 4 or 5 colleagues from the Cartoon Film Unit who actually were trained directly by the masters who actually trained here, who started working at the International Museum of Cinema. And essentially, this was the original Films Division. There were no other structures. So I remember coming here at a time when there were barely any structures here. and there was this building, and it was a completely dilapidated condition, and there were some sheds where the animation used to happen on the side, and there were some old Steinbeck machines, and it was a very dilapidated condition. But the importance of films division is very, very crucial for India, because there was a time that India actually did not have television. It did not have any means to disseminate. So it started with newsreels, and then animation film was used to convey Hum Do Hamare Do and many other government schemes. So many of the schemes that you saw on the theater. There was this mandatory films division film that you would have to see as by force, and everybody would cringe just before, because it was an exciting feature film that you've come to watch, and then you're watching this 5 or 10 minute documentary done by film division, and everybody would cringe like, oh, come on, just switch it off and let's get on with the goddamn movie. So, but this is the place where it actually started, and it was crucial for India in the growing years. Of course, I do believe that FD outlived its purpose and did not reinvent itself. But that's a different thing. The point is, the crucial seminal contribution to the India, the India that was independent and did not have much means, actually started from films division, and actually cartoon film unit had a huge contribution to play in it. Huge contribution to play in it. So one of the things is, where did it start? Because we did not know the art of animation. I'm not saying we didn't know the art of animation, but we didn't know it well enough. So in 1955, we had a program, we had an exchange, we had a program where a US animator called Claire Weeks came to India in 1955. There was some kind of a, bilateral agreement done between the government of India and the US government. And Claire Weeks had actually worked with Disney himself, Walt Disney himself, for 15 years. He had worked with Walt Disney himself for 15 years. And he was somebody who actually came to India, and he started training our animators. And one of the animators that he trained was Ram Mohan, who's considered to be the father of Indian animation, who's the quintessential pioneer of Indian animation. And everything that you see that happens in India after that, right from 1955, everything, it starts with this man, and then it goes to Ram Mohan, and everything that you see there, it is essentially Ram Mohan has to be an integral part of it. Even though he is no longer with us, everything that you see around it will trace its root to the man. So he was an extraordinary person. I will come back to him later on. So I want to just show you this clip. There's an amazing film that is available online as well, Glimpses of Indian Animation. And I'll show you a bit so you can relive a part of the history as well. So I'll just quickly put that on. What I've done is, obviously the film is long. It's about 30 minutes. So I have taken clips of various films and I put it together. So you'll see a bit of it, but I think it's a very exciting film from an exposition perspective. From an information perspective, it's really, really laden with a lot of information. And you can watch it on YouTube, the entire thing.
However, not all was lost. In the early 1950s, the noted Disney animator Claire Weeks set sail for India under the Indo-American Technical Cooperation Program.
So there you go. It was an imperfect marriage between Disney's Bambi and India's Ajanta frescoes. And the next film that I want to show you is a bit of the Banyan Deer as well, because Banyan Deer again is a very iconic film. These are films that I'm showing you today are iconic films that actually changed the course of India. And before this, there was no film with this kind of expertise or level of animation done in India. So with every single film that I share with you, I will share with you how things changed from there and how it changes the trajectory of Indian animation. Animation, you still don't see it on television even today, at least on Indian television. It was extraordinary for that time. In 1956, 1957, it's really amazing the kind of effort that was put into this film. I think about 8, 10 or 15 maybe people were involved in it for more than a year to make this film. So it's quite extraordinary what was happening in the late 50s, and a lot of it, of course, most of it is attributed to Claire Weeks and his training program. And of course, he brought with him his influences. So he brought with him Bambi because that's what he had worked on. I don't know how many people have seen Bambi. It's a incredible Disney classic, so you should see it. I would encourage that that you should see it. Anyway, moving on. So Banyan Tree, we saw that, and we saw the importance of the film. Why am I here? Okay, why am I standing in front of you? Is because of the fact that my father joined Films Division in 1961, and he was working in that building, in that museum. And of course, he came from Lucknow. He was a art school graduate, and he was a amazing painter. And he joined the background department to make the backgrounds and everything. And he's also considered to be the Indian animation pioneer. So he learned the art of storytelling, and he learned the art of animation again from the man, which is on your left is Ram Mohan, and on the right is my dad. My dad's name is Bhimsen, and he's again a quintessential Indian animation pioneer. So as I said, everything traces to this man on the left, which is Ram Mohan, because he's the one who actually trained a lot of people, including some of the people sitting in this room right now who are from the cartoon film unit. So it's an incredible history because everything is connecting to one particular institution, and that is called the cartoon film unit, which actually started from Films Division. Then there were some important films like My Wife's Daddy, which I'm going to skip. It was done by G.S. Suraya, and the animation was done by A.R. Sen. Subsequently, there was an extraordinary film called The Trip, which was again done by Pramod Pati. Pramod Pati had again learned filmmaking and animation from, I think if I'm not mistaken, he had learned it from Czech Republic at that time. There was no Czech Republic, there was Czechoslovakia at that time. And he had learned it from there, and he made this extraordinary film, which many of us may have seen in films in Doordarshan at that time. I'm just going to show you a glimpse of that as well. Because it is amazing at that time in 1970, this film is there. And uses stop motion. It uses time lapse, sorry. So you can see that the kind of creativity and the kind of enthusiasm that the team had, they were really wanting to really do extraordinary work. But that was also the time that 1970 was also the time that pretty much the two stalwarts, the 3-4 stalwarts of actually at least two stalwarts, that's Mr. Ramohan and my father, they actually decided to leave Films Division and set up on their own. So Films Division subsequently, of course, the cartoon film unit wasn't the same without them, although my father Bhimsen and Ramonji both kept in touch with everybody and kept on mentoring them as and when they could. But it wasn't the same because they started their own independent studios and they started doing a lot of advertising work. We're not going to get into that. That's a different story, and I hope Deepthi gives me 4 hours for that. Okay. So The Trip, and of course, subsequently my father made The Climb, and I today run Climb Media because this 1-minute gem of a film won the Silver Hugo at Chicago Film Festival way back in 1970. And this is just a simple 1-minute film. It's available online as well. It's available on YouTube. You can see it. So this was the genesis and the beginning of Climb Films, which today runs as Climb Media. And we have, we have done about 10-15 feature films and a whole lot of bunch of other things. So, you know, it's a long tail and a long legacy that we had started off from there. Swimming, I don't know how many people remember this film. This was done in 1971. Okay, Swimming is a film that was done by NID. So NID again is a long history of producing some extraordinary, NID is National Institute of Design for those uninitiated, it's in Ahmedabad. It's one of the premier institutes even today for teaching animation. They take very, very few select students, but whoever they take in, many of them end up being world-class animators and Oscar-winning filmmakers as well, some of them. Pan Nalin is from there. You saw his cello show. He's from there. You have a lot of extraordinary ad filmmakers who are from NID as well. And at that time in 1976, 1977, we had Ishu Patel, who's got 4 or 5 Oscar nominations for his films. He worked with the National Film Board of Canada for several decades. And of course, today teaches animation at university in Singapore. And I would love to show you this film, but I don't think we have the time because I'd like to, I'm running a bit late. Then we have Abid. Abid is an extraordinary film again. Abid is 1972. 1972, this kind of film was made. I don't know if many people got to see this film online, but this is again stop motion. And Abid is actually based on this very, very famous painter called Abid Surti. He's a painter and writer. You must have heard about Bahadur Comics. I don't know how many of you have heard about Bahadur Comics. He was the creator of Bahadur Comics. He's the creator of Dabbuji series, which used to come in many newspapers, including Dharam Yug and Illustrated Weekly at that time. So he's a very prolific, very, very extraordinary guy. Even today, he's at 85. But you know, he's so driven and he's so energetic, and he can put a 20-year-old to a shame, you know, with the kind of energy that he has. And he runs a huge NGO as well. So let me show you the clip. Just have a look. Extraordinary genius he was, and he was, I believe he was also the chief producer, right? Was he the chief producer? No. Joint chief producer, okay. So he was a joint chief producer and quite an extraordinary guy by himself. This is a film I think most of us remember. Again, it's a product from here. Again, I'd love to show you, but we're running out of time. It was done by the third animation pioneer. There are 3 animation pioneers, and the third one is Mr. Samant, Mr. VG Samant. And he also made the Hanuman film, the Hanuman feature film that you saw in 2001, 2002, which was produced by Percept. So Mr. Samant was a third pioneer, and he made this wonderful film that all of us remember, and it is deeply etched in our memories, right? Then Ramon made this extraordinary film called You Said It Again, which was a National Award-winning film. We're going to skip this as well. It was based on R.K. Lakshman's cartoons. And again, this is the reason why I'm sharing these films is because you can look it up online and you can see it on your own as well. It's a great study to kind of see these films. Then there was a film called Munni that was done by my dad for Films Division. It was a commissioned film by Films Division. Now, why is it that I want to show you this clip? Because the reason why I want to show you this clip is because for the first time something was done that was unique in India. So there was a guy called Ub Iwerks. Ub Iwerks, actually, Disney was the face of Walt Disney. But essentially, Disney had some extraordinary talent that was driving him and making him. Disney never sketched after 1928. And 1936 is when Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs came out, which is the first Disney film. But Disney was a very poor artist. He was a very poor animator. He was not even an animator. And there was this guy working for him. His name was Ub Iwerks. Now, Ub Iwerks was a person who actually created Mickey Mouse. Disney lent his voice to to Mickey Mouse, and Ub Iwerks is the actual genius who sketched it. Now, Ub Iwerks had an extraordinary talent of actually making 850 drawings a day and also find time to fix Disney's car. So this is the extraordinary talent of Ub Iwerks, but he was extremely shy, very, very reticent Danish guy who would just sit in the corner and just draw and just do his stuff. And of course, he would supervise and all that stuff. And of course, he left Disney. He tried to work on his own. He tried to start his own. But because his personality was so introverted, he could not ever succeed. So he joined Disney back and he shut his studio down. He couldn't succeed. And Disney, being the person who was a showman, who was a much larger person, usurped the entire credit from this entire team. But if you read history, of course, he's been credited there. Ub Iwerks has been credited there. But we know only about Walt Disney. We don't know about how Walt Disney came about in existence. And Ub Iwerks is also credited, if you've seen Bambi, Ab Iwerks is also credited with, he was an extraordinary technical genius as well. So he's the one who's credited with creating the rides, the roller coaster rides that you see in Walt Disney. So it's called Iwerks Entertainment. He left that and he created those rides, and then he gave those designs to Walt Disney to create Disneyland. And then Disneyland only happened because Disney saw incredible possibilities in those rides, and he married it along with his brand and his mascots, and created mascots, and he merchandised and he licensed all his characters, and voila, now Disney becomes what Disney is today, right? But just think about it. If you go to Disneyland and you don't have any rides there, so that's what Ab Iwerks really brought to the table, apart from the fact that he created Mickey Mouse. Or at least we can say co-created Mickey Mouse. Now, Ab Iwerks is also credited with the film called Bambi, right? We talked about that deer film. I don't know how many people have seen it, Bambi. Okay, a few. Okay, good. So Bambi had this extraordinary sense of depth. Otherwise, everything would be two-dimensional. There was no 3D anyway. 3D came only in the 90s. But all films used to look two-dimensional. But Bambi had this extraordinary sense of depth, and the camera could travel through the jungle. So what would happen is that you would keep drawings in multi-planes, and the camera would travel, and then you take the glass out with the layers, and you could travel the camera. Therefore, you could create a jungle. With shallow depth of focus, you could create a feeling of depth and dimension. And that was a multi-plane camera that he created, which could actually move back and forth. And there were planes of glass in which various facets of the background were kept. And the camera, when it went through it, with the shallow depth of with the right kind of exposure, it actually created that sense of depth. And the opening shot of Bambi is actually all about that. So this film actually created that for the first time in India. So my father actually he borrowed the designs, and he actually developed a multi-plane camera. And I'm sure there would be some films before this which were attempted at Films Division, but never at this scale. So I'm going to show you this film, a bit of it. So it's the first film that I know of has to try to give a two and a half dimension to the characters and depth to the characters as well. So that is something that was done at that time, way back in 1974. And this film had the lyrics by Gulzar. So Pani Bada Hai Dani, Daya Dharam aur Prem Ki Kahani, Pani Bada Hai Dani. It was extraordinary in terms of the music as well. Vanraj Bhatia is one of the biggest composers at that time. And this film was really, really powerful because of the fact that it used the three-dimensional. For the first time ever, you can see through the camera moves, the first time ever, the three-dimensionality of a space actually came out because of the fact that you use a multi-plane camera quite extensively through it, and created that kind of poetic dimension that a film requires, an entire space of a city that was required to create this kind of form. You may remember Ek Anek Ekta. Again, this is a film that Ek Chiriya Anek Chiriya, that's done by my father as well, so which is why he's considered to be one of the animation pioneers as well. Now, with all due respect, there are certain people sitting here at Films Division, but and there were some films done at in the 80s as well, but really nothing quite as remarkable as what was done in the 70s and 60s. So I'm going to skip the 80s and I'm going to come straight to the 90s now. And 90s, we start the story with Ramon, who was assiduously working in the advertising space, created this extraordinary character called Meena. Now, this is the first time that animation was being used by 2-minute, 5-minute short films, but this is the first time animation was actually used for a series. And a character called Meena was created by UNICEF. And of course, UNICEF didn't create the character. They had an idea of creating a character, and they came to Ramon, and Ramon was the best in the craft in 92. And Ramon actually created this character called Meena. And this character was actually about the girl child and how to, because there was a lot of female infanticide happening at that time, not feticide, because we didn't have sex determination tests at that time. But female infant, the ratio was very, very skewed, and typically there was a lot of discrimination against girls even there is in some pockets in India. And the idea is this particular character or set of characters was created for the entire Indian subcontinent. So you see the Meena character, the name itself is generic, and she had a parrot over there on top called Me Too. Now, while UNICEF understood that, you know, they want to create stories and short films about 15 or 20 minutes each, and several episodes which talk about girls' education or girls' rights, or about how girls need equal amount of nutrition and the same kind of treatment as the boys. These problems was common for the entire Indian subcontinent, and so the characters that had to be created were very, very generic. They had to be acceptable. So there was a lot of focus group tests that happened, and this character became hugely successful. And also in the rural areas, it was shown a lot. And this is the first time that you saw an animation property being developed, not monetized, but developed and disseminated in this big way to actually change and impact society. I'm not saying that the previous films division films didn't do that, but in the 90s, this was the series, this was the defining series actually did that. So it was extraordinary. And then subsequently, Ram Mohan was lauded so much for his work that UNICEF in South Africa, they came to him and they said that we have similar problems here. We need you to modify it, and the same character with a darker skin and slightly different hair and unique stories that are relevant for the African subcontinent were created, and that character was called Zara. So Sara and Meena became like the same, embodying the same values of protecting girls and protecting females in two different continents. So in the Indian subcontinent as well as and that is an extraordinary achievement if you think about it. I mean, how do you actually create that today? Think about it. It's done in 1992. At a time there was no internet, there was no computers, so everything is drawn by hand, single frame, painstakingly. There were huge teams working on it, and one has to really appreciate that. So I'm going to show you the trailer for this. And the quality of animation, by the way, you still don't find it in television today.
It. And Mala and the other children need these too, including friends. Will you remember that when you see them again?
And an extraordinary work that Ram Mohan had done way back in 92. It started, of course, it went on for 15 odd years, the work. Many of you all may have seen the Ramayana. Okay, so why is Ramayana important? Again, Ramayana came again in 1992, I think. Let me just clarify. Yes, 92. And Ramayana is special because it was a Japanese company. If you see the designs, you see it is all anime style and some really, really extraordinary stuff. I don't know how many of you all have seen the actual animation feature film. It's a feature film. Only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So I would suggest you see the film because you will not get to see an animation feature film like this even today in India. So it is, the quality of the film was extraordinary. Now why? It was done entirely in Japan, but Ram Mohan was one of the directors. So he was also because the Japanese wanted the Indian touch to it, and they wanted the Indian flora fauna. They wanted the Indian trees, the Indian vegetation, the Indian sense of architecture, the Indian sense of storytelling, Indian sensibilities in terms of character design, also in terms of the apparels or the costumes that the characters would be wearing, or the props, how they had to be developed, and everything in there. So this was again something that was quite extraordinary. I'm going to show you this trailer. Have a look at it. And it's for the first time we did a co-production with any country. So this is the first ever in that space. So you can see it was quite extraordinary in terms of the quality and in terms of the storytelling, in the kind of shot taking, the angles, the dimensions, and everything in there. Next film is, of course, Money's Dying, which I'll not be able to share with you at this point, again due to time constraints. But Money's Dying again is a film that is special to the Indian history, because it was done by a filmmaker called Shilpa Ranade, and we'll see more of her work. And she is a graduate from Royal College of Arts, and her husband is also a filmmaker, and one of the biggest studios today running, called Paperboat Animation, is actually because of Shilpa Ranade, because the husband is running it. And they do some extraordinary work in the animation space. They're one of the torchbearers also of modern animation. We'll come to that because I want to cover that as well. We're doing badly on time. Okay. So these films, two short films, were done with the collaboration of National Film Board of Canada, which is the first time we did a co-production. But unlike Ramayan, these films were actually produced in India for the National Film Board, in co-production with the National Film Board. And one of them was directed by me, with the one on the left is called Trade. That is on child prostitution. And there were 21 countries involved, and 21 short films were done in 21 different countries on various issues pertaining to the child rights. So the UN Charter for Child Rights had actually just come out in 92, 93 and 96. They wanted to make these films. And so I was at the National Film Board, I made these films. So every single frame is made in India. And we worked with the National Film Board very closely to kind of see how these films fit in their series of films. So Trade also won the National Award. And on the right is Locked, which is about a child working in a lock factory. So again, from that perspective, how many people have seen Arjun, the Warrior Prince? So we jump from there straight to 2012. Anybody seen this? Okay, few people. So let me just share the trailer, because the trailer will tell you how Indian animation has really come a long way since then. Have a look. That's a tragedy of our times, is that animation filmmakers, many of them who are much better than many of the successful live action filmmakers, are not being recognized in this country. And that's a tragedy in terms of not just not getting the right kind of funding, but not even getting the right kind of platform, the right kind of exposure, right kind of place under the sun. Because this kind of trailer, if you've seen the kind of work that has been done here in animation, and mind you, in live action you have actors who take a lot of the burden off, and you have many other departments. You have a cameraman, you have a art director, and all those things. In animation, unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, the director is a karta dharta. There is no editor in place, because you have to create the film at the storyboard level, at the animatics level. And so the director not only has to be a great storyteller, but he has to also be a master craftsman in terms of being able to tell the story effectively. And talent like Arnab Chaudhary, unfortunately, is not among us right now, but he needs to be celebrated, he needs to be eulogized, and he needs to be be sitting in a history of our books, animation history books. He should be, because this film was really, if you guys see the film, you'll know what I'm talking about. And the film didn't do well. It made only 85 lakhs in the first weekend, which is a paltry amount, because people think, oh, animation in this country, the thing is, oh, animation is for kids, we don't want to go and see it. Of course, that is changing over the past 10 years. But this film came out in 2012. And it's unfortunate that talent like Arnab Chaudhary and many others are not being recognized. And I'll show you some extraordinary work now. I'm just going to quickly run you through that. So that's Arjun for you. You've seen Gopi Gavaiya. How many people have seen Gopi Gavaiya here? Again, very few. Okay. Some extraordinary work being done again from an organization called Children's Film Society of India, which again is not, I'm sorry to say, but I don't want to be politically correct, but CFSI, most films of CFSI don't really work well. But here's a film that was done so extraordinarily well. If you just look at the design, and you just look at the kind of intricacy in the detail, then please note the music. The music is extraordinary as well. This is done by Shilpa Ranade. As I shared with you, she's done Money's Dying. Now, after 15, 17 years, she graduates to do this. Look at this. Compositions. There's another extraordinary film called Tokri, which picks up the top honors at NSC. NSC is basically the Cannes of animation. It is a festival that if you are into animation and if you are interested in animation or gaming, this is the festival to visit, and this is the festival to pitch your work. And it's in France. It's about 200 odd miles from Cannes itself, and it's a beautiful scenic place. Now Tokri wins the top honors over there. For the first time, an Indian film, short film, actually wins an honor, done by E. Suresh, again an extraordinary talent that we have, unrecognized, I mean known very well within the circle, but again not recognized beyond the circle. And we're really running short in terms of being able to project ourselves more forcefully as an industry and as a nation that can produce some really great quality stuff. This was done using stop motion, so each and everything that you see there is actually a handmade puppet, just small miniature puppets, and the entire city has been created in this way. It's quite amazing. Bombay Rose, I think, how many people have seen Bombay Rose? Okay. So I'm not going to, again, I don't have the time to actually share the trailer for this. I do have the trailer for it, but I don't want to share that because it is commonly available. Again, it picked up the top honors at Venice and many other festivals. Gitanjali Rao, again, made some really extraordinary short films before this, and she went on to do Bombay Rose after about 8 or 10 years of struggling to get funds. So she would make it piecemeal. But unfortunately, that's the journey which most animation filmmakers are going through. And people like me are just simply quitting the space and saying, hey, you know what, live action is better because it's easier to raise funds there. So that's really unfortunate. But there are great stories that are sticking on, and this is a new talent that India has. This guy is 24 or 25 maybe. His name is Upamanyu. Again, won the top honors at NSC for Wade. How many people have seen Wade? I need to show you this trailer. This is unbelievable, and you need to see this film. It's on YouTube. Extraordinary visuals in there. Of course, the film itself is very gripping and mesmerizing, both in terms of artwork and both in terms of composition and the way the narrative is, and the story and the music and everything, the drama. It's extraordinary, and coming from somebody so young is actually quite stunning. And I'll come more about Upamanyu because his journey is coming out to be very interesting as well. Dune. How many people have seen Dune? Why am I bringing this up right now? Okay, Dune, I'm bringing it up because Dune won the visual effects best visual effects. It's a Hollywood film done by Villeneuve and Denis Villeneuve, and he is we won the best VFX for this film, Oscars, and the company that won it, DNEG, is actually an Indian company. So just to show you in terms of VFX also, we say we don't know how to do VFX. With the right kind of budget and the right kind of team, an Indian company can actually deliver the results. And so this is to tell you, on the VFX front, there is so much happening there. There's a lot of trash work also happening, but there is so much more extraordinary stuff happening there as well, which is right up there in terms of the Oscars. And many of you may have heard of a company called Prime Focus, right? How many have heard of Prime Focus? So DNEG is actually part of Prime Focus. It is owned by Namit Malhotra. So it is the same company. Of course, DNEG has offices all over the world, but primarily the work is done in India. And it's an Indian-owned company. Mumbai Gullies, again, a bunch of people, very enthusiastic. On the gaming front, now I'm coming on the gaming front, because animation now is growing in every single area. Now you see, on the gaming front, you'll see this extraordinary trailer that I'm going to share with you. It's called Mumbai Gullies. Have a look at this. Okay. Quickly moving on. I have 1 minute left. Heirloom. So that is Upamanyu's new project. It's a feature film this time. So he's from Wade. He's graduated into making a feature film. And this is again an extraordinary project, because if you just look at the visual. Now this is again a first for India, because he is now got an NSC, which I told you is the premier festival in the world. He's got a residency there, which is he's being trained and coached and mentored on the story by the best in the world. And he's taken that residency, which lasts for a few months, and he is developing this feature film over there. And that network not just provides you creative inputs in terms of story and structure and other things, but it also provides you with funding opportunities, because it gives you if you are doing a project with the NSC residency, you're likely to be picked up. So you will see some extraordinary stuff coming there, and once people like Upman, you open the pathway, it'll become easier for others, talented artists, and there's some really talented artists who need this coaching, mentoring platform that will take them to the last mile. So this is something also I would like to share with you. Quickly share, this is my last piece, because I shared something, and that's...
I'm from Kolkata. I studied animation film.
So you can see the kind of extraordinary talent that there is in this country that is coming up, and Upamanyu is not just one of the people. There are many really bright, talented animation filmmakers that are coming up in this country, and it's really extraordinary what is happening in this country right now, because we are at a 1.32 billion space in India, and we want to take the entire AVGC sector, which is animation, visual effects, gaming, and comics, and of course that includes XR also now. We want to take it up to a 40 billion space. And when we talk about taking about 40 billion space, it can happen only if you have creative entrepreneurs and you have people like Upamanyu who can actually, if they get a project greenlit, they will employ 500 people under them, and they will create that talent. We have the critical mass, we have this, but most of them are doing television work, which is fine. We need to fill that monster also with a lot of stuff that is regular stuff. But for creative excellence, we need to have animation storytellers, we need to have filmmakers, we need to have people who are thinking creativity at the highest realm. And that is going to be the most key challenge there, to create that workforce, to create that creative leadership and authorship, so that we can take our stories like Heirloom and Wade and reach out to the world and say, hey, you know what, these are Indian stories, and this is where India is today, and we are arrived on the world stage, which we have, but we have not declared it yet. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take questions. Anybody wanted to? Okay, can we switch on the light? Hi, Petul sir. Anybody has any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. So my question is that you just said that currently the anime industry is worth around $3 billion, and you
No, it's a 1.32 billion.
okay. And you want to take it to around 40 billion.
I don't want to take it. I think the government wants to take it, rightly so.
Okay.
And
So
we
is
are there as
any timeline?
stakeholders. We are stakeholders in that.
Okay.
Obviously, we are the ones who are going to be taking it forward, right? Now the government will only set the targets and enable. The government is an enabler. It's not the one running the animation studios, or it's not the one running the industry.
Okay. So would you like to tell any timeline by which time like this 40
I
billion
believe by
target?
2030 is when the government envisages, and it's a tall task, because we need to create as I said, the only way it can happen is right now India is mostly doing service providing work. We are doing mostly work. We are the back end office for the world, which is not many people knew that Dune is actually done in India. But we are the back office. But the real money is being made by the producers, being made by the creators. We're not yet coming to that space in many areas. So once we create properties, we create stories that are actually telling, that are told to the world and succeed humongously, like Dora or Simpsons or whatever you. I mean, so many IPs that are there. Once we're able to create those stories, we'll be able to get in the billions of dollars that are required to jumpstart the industry or to extrapolate the industry in a huge manner. We're 2 lakhs people right now employed here. we want to take it to 20 lakhs. The only way it will happen is through creative entrepreneurship and creating storytellers. It will not happen only through service providing. And there's an analogy for it as well. The analogy is very simple. The analogy is in 1991, when the Indian economy was in the doldrums, the economy was liberalized because the government did not have a choice, not because we were wanting to liberalize. There was liberalization talks were happening since the mid 80s. Rajiv Gandhi said that he will liberalize it, but never happened. In 91, we had to pledge our gold. With sovereign gold had to be pledged and had to be shipped to UK to pay for the bills for the trade deficit. Now, as a result of which the government decided that they want to obviously galvanize the industries, and they started giving the IT ministry, IT industry made a presentation to the government and said, give us a tax break and we will deliver the result. And we will convert it to billions of dollars. At that time, the industry was in 1988, the IT industry was $50 million, right? Today, it is upwards of $275 billion. It's 9% of our GDP, right? That is happening because today, India is the leading startup in the world. We are creators. We're creating the startups. We're not service providers anymore. Initially, we started off as a service provider, back-end office. Y2K bug, I don't know how many people know the history of that. Y2K bug came in, oh, we will fix the Y2K bug and we'll do that. And then we started doing coding. And then we became the back-end, the sweatshop. From the BPO, we moved to the KPO, which is back processing office. BPO was a low-end work. We no longer became viable there. We had to move up, came into the KPO zone, which is the knowledge processing. So the BPO work went to the cheaper destinations or been taken over by AI, whatever. Some of it has been taken over by AI. So this is where where the AVGC industry is at this point. Sorry, go ahead. I talk too much.
जिस तरह फिल्मों के ट्रेनिंग के लिए इंस्टीट्यूट हैं बहुत सारे अपने यहाँ फिल्म की ट्रेनिंग के लिए इंस्टीट्यूट हैं अपने फिल्म इंस्टीट्यूट इंडिया वगैरह वैसे ही क्या एनिमेशन के लिए कुछ महत्वपूर्ण इंस्टीट्यूट हैं अपने
एनिमेशन में बहुत सारे इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं NID है IDC है IDC IIT में है ट्रेनिंग इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं these are all government funded government supported organizations and they are doing a good job, but we're not creating enough animation filmmakers there. We need a lot more. And if we have to extrapolate, we have to really, because you have to understand that every 10 graduate that pass out from IDC, not even one may be necessarily make it successfully. So we need to find those people like E. Suresh and Upamanyu, and you know, those are rare this thing. अब 100 में से 1 या 2 ऐसा निकलेगा जो कि वो ब्रेक करेगा. वो तो हमेशा होता ही है. IIT में देखो आप तो सब लोग रेगुलर जॉब पे जा रहे हैं, पर उसमें से एक आध कोई ऐसा जीनियस निकल आएगा जो कि फिर इन्फोसिस शुरू कर देगा, तो फिर वही एम्प्लॉयर बनेगा सबके लिए. तो वो एक उस जगह पे हम.
Hello,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Your presentation was very interesting and it has given various names which were not known to many people, the people from India who are making this. But I am a jury for the Oscar Awards. I want that there should be more entries for animated short film, which is a category, independent category, and we can win Oscar Awards for that. But unfortunately, the films which come there, they have a back end being done in India. So they don't get
Yes.
the
So we
credit.
don't deserve those awards also because we are doing the back end work. We are not doing the front end
No,
work.
but can we not do a film in India and it can go as
Yes.
an entry as well?
Right. So this is the whole challenge of how to create our own IP, or how to create our own intellectual property, or how to create our own films and our stories that can travel across the world. And there is some gaps in terms of not just creativity, in terms of being telling stories that are not relevant in India only, but that stories that can travel across. That's one. The second most important part is the business of animation and business of gaming and visual and VFX. We need to understand that, and for that we need to have a platform and a forum for creating that space so that we can understand that space, we can collaborate, and none of us in India have the entire knowledge to create that. So we need to collaborate with the rest of the world, but we need to own it. It needs to be an indigenously started movement, but it needs to collaborate with the rest of the world, listen to them, and then create something extraordinary, which is what happened in Japan. Japan का animation जो है वो US से भी बड़ा है अभी कई मामले में. तो Japan became the sweatshop for US in the 50s and 60s, and then anime happened because they had their own manga comics. So the idea is कि उसी तरह हुआ है, हमारा भी उस inflection point पे अभी, hopefully.
Thank you.
Yes. Is it okay if we run out? Okay.
हेलो, शायद आवाज़ पहुंच रही
People know.
है. सॉरी सर, गुड
Yeah.
नून मिस्टर क्रीट.
Sorry.
थोड़ा सा मैं लेट पहुंचा हूँ यहाँ पर. हाँ,
हाँ.
बट एनिमेशन वाली बात थी इसलिए क्योंकि फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आरजे अभिनव पराशर फ्रॉम एफएम रेनबो मुंबई, और एक्टर भी हूँ और थिएटर काफ़ी सारा करता हूँ, फिल्म्स काफ़ी देखता हूँ इसलिए. तो एनिमेशन वाली अभी जो बात चल रही थी उसके लिए एक सवाल तो सर ने जो भी पॉइंट आउट किया था कुछ उसके आसपास का ही है कि अब एनिमेशन के लिए जो आपने बताया कि बहुत सारा बिजनेस अभी और बड़ा बनाना है क्योंकि यूएस, यूके और इस सब यूरोप में बहुत ज़्यादा है वो. अब मैं देख रहा होता हूँ आइस एज 1, 2 और 3, या इससे पहले मैंने स्पिरिट देखी थी जिसमें ब्रायन एडम्स ने अपना एक सिंगल रिलीज़ किया था Here I Am. और हमारे पास अब इंडिया में जो विजन्स हैं अगर वो ज़्यादा हैं तो स्टोरीज बहुत लोगों तक नहीं पहुँच पा रही होती हैं. अब हमारे पास अगर कोई और एक आध जो सिनेमा आते हैं एनिमेशन वाले बहुत कम आते हैं और एक्चुअली शायद ही वो हॉल तक पहुँच पा रहे होते हैं. तो सबसे पहले अगर इनकी स्क्रीनिंग हो जाए वहाँ तक पहुँचें. और बीच में आपको ये भी पता होगा जापानीज़ एक मूवी आई थी रामायण द लेजेंड ऑफ प्रिंस राम,
वो दिखाया था इधर.
वो जो आपने दिखाया था, क्योंकि उसके साथ सबसे बड़ी समस्या ये थी अभी आदिपुरुष को लेकर एक कंट्रोवर्सी चल रही थी कि जिस तरह आप दिखा रहे हो. कमाल की बात तो है कि जब वो बहुत अच्छे से दिखा रहे थे उसको बैन करने की मांग हो गई थी.
हाँ,
कई
उस टाइम
सारे
पे
narratives
92 में बैन हो रही थी.
वो बैन हो रही थी जो
हाँ,
कि
तो वो
one of
एक
the
आध दो
best
थिएटर में
animation है.
रिलीज हुई थी. तो अनफॉर्चुनेटली ये तो इशू है ही है ना इधर के.
तो वो एक नैरेटिव्स बड़े चेंज होते हैं उसकी समस्या है. और दूसरा हमारे पास वॉल ये होती हैं, आइस एज 1, 2, 3 इस तरह की मूवीज होती हैं, स्पिरिट होती हैं. हमें कई बार कार्टून्स पर काम करना पड़ता है जैसे कि छोटा भीम अभी आ रहा है.
करेक्ट.
थैंक गॉड कि हम वहाँ तक उस लेवल तक डेवलप हो पाए.
हाँ,
और कर
पर
लेते
वो भी इंटरनेशनल प्रॉपर्टी नहीं है क्योंकि
जी.
ज़्यादातर तो मतलब छोटा भीम अभी माइटी भीम जो है जब भी नेटफ्लिक्स में आ रहा है वो उन्होंने इंटरनेशनलाइज किया हुआ है, बट वो नेटफ्लिक्स काफ़ी कुछ कंट्रोल कर रही है उसमें, विच इज़ गुड, विच इज़ फाइन. बट छोटा भीम इंट्रिंसिकली इज इंडियन एंड इंडियन डायस्पोरा.
कैन वी टेक इट टू द नेक्स्ट लेवल, क्योंकि अब इनक्रेडिबल्स आती है जिसमें शाहरुख खान आवाज़ देते हैं, बहुत सारे लोग हैं एक्टर जो यहाँ से आवाज़ दे रहे हैं. थैंक गॉड को लॉयन किंग्स जैसी मूवियाँ हैं और इसके बाद ये आती है जंगल बुक, रीमेक भी करते हैं तो उसमें नाना पाटेकर साहब ने ही आवाज़ दी होती है जो पहले उन्होंने जंगल बुक में दी थी जिसका गाना गुलजार साहब ने लिखा था. तो ऐसी कुछ चीज़ें होती हैं जिसमें प्रियंका चोपड़ा सामने आई हैं, आते हैं, बट फिर भी उसके बावजूद मैं कह रहा हूँ कि क्या इंडिया से हम लोग अभी उम्मीद करें ऐसी कि फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल हमें भी शायद अपना विज़न चेंज करना पड़ेगा कि हमारे पास अच्छी इंडियन स्टोरीज़ हैं, हम लोग खुद जाएं और अगर वो हॉल में लगे तो जाकर देखें.
देखिए, कोई भी चीज़ जो कोई भी इंडस्ट्री क्रिएट होती है ना वो सिर्फ एक आदमी के दिमाग में नहीं होती है, वो एक कॉन्वर्सेशन से क्रिएट होती है, एक नैरेटिव से क्रिएट होती है. अभी हमने इंडियन एनिमेशन इंडस्ट्री का एक नैरेटिव अच्छे से बनाया नहीं है. एक नैरेटिव तभी बनेगा जब भी काफ़ी सारे लोग जुड़ेंगे, उसमें से काफ़ी विचारधारा के लोग जुड़ेंगे, जैसे अलग अलग विचारधारा के लोग जुड़ेंगे, उसमें से काफ़ी सारे इंटरनेशनल भी होंगे जो कि हमको बोलेंगे भाई तुम ये कर रहे हो, इधर हम जा चुके हैं, ये सब कर चुके हैं और ये हमारा नतीजा रहा है, तुमको करना है तो करो, पर नतीजा यही होगा अगर करना है तो. फिर आपके ऊपर है कि सुनना कि भाई वो जो जिस हिसाब से वो फेल हुआ है क्यों फेल हुआ है, और आपको लगता है कि आप उससे बेहतर कर सकते हैं तो आप जाएंगे उस रास्ते. अगर आपको लगता है नहीं ये जो बात बोल रहा है सही है तो फिर आप उस रास्ते नहीं जाएंगे. तो वो जो लर्निंग्स आती हैं वो कोलैबोरेशन से आती हैं, वो एक इंटरफेस क्रिएट करने से आती है, एक प्लेटफॉर्म क्रिएट करने से आती हैं, और वो जो है हमारे पास अभी फ़िलहाल नहीं है. ये जो प्लेटफॉर्म है कि हम अगर मैंने जो फिल्म मेकर्स आपको बताए अभी यहाँ पर जो हम अब जो इतने आपने देखे तो आपको क्या लगा, टैलेंटेड है ना हम, है ना? तो एकदम. तो द आइडिया इज़ के वो 15-20 फिल्म मेकर जो दिखाए मैंने, और ऐसे कम से कम 100 हैं जो कि एक्स्ट्रॉर्डनरी हैं, जिनको मैं नहीं डाल सकता हूँ क्योंकि टाइम नहीं है. बट सवाल ये होता है कि वो 15 लोग भी मिलते नहीं हैं तो कहाँ मिलेंगे, प्लेटफॉर्म कहाँ है? अगर हम जो है 15 लोग भी मिलना चाहते हैं कि भाई चलो डिस्कस करते हैं क्या क्या कर रहे हैं हम लोग, आपस में डिस्कस करते हैं, आपस लोगों की हेल्प करते हैं, हमारे पास वो फोरम भी नहीं है. हमारे पास कोई एनिमेशन फेस्टिवल नहीं है, हमारे पास कोई गेमिंग फेस्टिवल नहीं है, हमारे पास कोई इंटरनेशनल एक्सपोजर नहीं है. अभी मैं जाता हूँ इंटरनेशनली, मैं एनएससी जाता हूँ तो मैं उधर देखता हूँ तो ठीक है मेरे को एक्सपोजर मिल जाता है, पर वो 3 लाख 3.5 लाख 4 लाख रुपए खर्चा करके मैं जाता हूँ. कितने लोग अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं वो एक्सपोजर लेने के लिए? मैं 4 लाख रुपए खर्चा करूँगा मैं, तो मैं जाता हूँ तो क्योंकि मेरे को चाहिए होता है, और कुछ लोग जाते हैं, पर कितने लोग अफोर्ड कर पाएंगे और कितने लोग जा पाएंगे?
और शायद अभी कुछ फिल्म फेस्टिवल्स ऐसे होते हैं, एक दो को अगर हम नदारत कर दें या छोड़ दें कि वहाँ पर अब एनिमेशन वाली मूवीज़ की भी एंट्री हो जाए, तो अगर एनिमेटेड मूवीज़ अगर वहाँ पर भेजी जा रही हैं तो कम से कम उनको उतना एक्सपोजर मिल जाए. थैंक गॉड कि यूट्यूब जैसी चीज़ें हैं, अगर किसी को कहीं ना कुछ बेचना हो तो एमएक्स प्लेयर पर वो जा सकता है अब, क्योंकि हर कोई अमेजन प्राइम तक या नेटफ्लिक्स तक नहीं पहुँच पाएगा.
हाँ,
जिसको
तो
कम बजट में कुछ मिल रहा है तो वो दे सकता है।
वो तो हो ही रहा है। देखिए, अगर जैसे मैंने 2 फिल्में शेयर की आज, टोकरी और एक वेड, ये दोनों को जो है टॉप ऑनर्स मिले हैं, दोनों को टॉप ऑनर्स मिले हैं एनएससी में, तो वो तो हो ही रहा है। हम इंडिया का जो है विजिबिलिटी बढ़ ही रहा है इन दैट सेंस। तो वो पर हम इज इट इनफ फॉर अ कंट्री ऑफ 1.4 बिलियन पीपल? एब्सोल्युटली नॉट। वो हम लोग जो है वी शुड बी ओनिंग at least 15-20% of the world business. We own only 0.2%. So that's the scope. That's not just a challenge, that's the scope. तभी अगर इतने यंगस्टर्स घुस रहे हैं एवीजीसी में, सेक्टर में, तो कमाल की बात है, क्योंकि उसमें से कुछ लोग क्रैक करेंगे इसको।
वन लास्ट क्वेश्चन सर, मतलब एक ही इस पर पॉइंट है, वो ये है कि हमारे पास भी काफ़ी सारी स्टोरीज होती है, जैसे मालगुडी डेज पहले आ रहा था, अब उसको एनिमेशन फॉर्म में लेकर आना, क्योंकि बच्चों ने बहुत सारी कहानी, या आज की जनरेशन, हम जैसी जनरेशन तो ढूंढ कर देख लेगी यूट्यूब पर कहीं, जिसने नहीं देखा वो देखे। महाभारत को अगले तरीके से दिखाने का, नेक्स्ट लेवल पर दिखाने का तरीका, या चंद्रकांता और चंद्रकांता संतति, जो कि लिखा एक बहुत बड़े लेवल पर गया था, लेकिन आज तक उतना लार्जर देन लाइफ लेवल पर आया ही नहीं है।
तो इसका जो आपने मालगुडी डेज का डाला ना, वो इसका कल्चरल इडियोसिंक्रेसीज जो है, जो एक उसका कल्चरल जो एक एस्पेक्ट है, वो इतना लिमिटेड और स्पेसिफिक है कि उसको इंटरनेशनल तरीके से बोलना बहुत डिफ़िकल्ट है। ओके, तो वो स्टोरी जो है आपके इंडियन डायस्पोरा में चल जाएगी, आपके बाकी, बट कोई आप बोलो कि स्पेन में बैठ के कोई उसको वो कर ले, तो उसको अडेप्ट करना पड़ेगा। वो अडेप्टेशन की जो क्वालिटी है, वो इन्फॉर्मेशन कहाँ से आएगी आपको? तो आपको स्पेन में कोई बैठा है ना, उसको दिखाना पड़ेगा। तो मतलब वही आ जाता है फिर, जो प्लेटफॉर्म क्रिएट करो कि आप जो है इंटरनेशनली अगर इसको जाना चाह रहे हो कि इफ इज अ स्टोरी दैट ट्रैवल्स एंड अ स्टोरी दैट इज़ यूनिवर्सल येट इंडिया स्पेसिफिक, अगर मालगुडी डेज की बात करें, तो आपको प्लेटफॉर्म में खड़ा करना पड़ेगा और आपको 10 लोगों को पिच करना होगा, इंटरनेशनल लोग जो कि आपके कल्चर को जानते भी नहीं और आपको उनके जानने की कोई रुचि भी नहीं रखते नेसेसरली, और फिर वो लोग बोले कमाल का है यार ये सब चीज़, ये तो तुमने जो कल्चरल एस्पेक्ट निकाला ये तो कमाल का है, ये स्टोरी कमाल की है। आप फिर उसको बोलें अच्छा नहीं इसको ऐसे नहीं, ऐसे ये नहीं समझ में आया मुझे, ये जो है इसको, पर ऐसा क्यों है इंडिया में, पर ऐसा क्यों करते हो आप लोग, पाँव क्यों छूते हो, या ये क्यों करते हो, वो क्यों छूते, जो भी है कल्चरल इडियोसिंक्रेसीज that will need to be modified and adapted for an international audience. Yes, can we take questions or we're running out of time? Huh? No? Okay, outside.
Here we come towards a very insightful
Thank you.
session. Thank you so much, Mr. Khurana, for taking us through the India's animation legacy.